Everybody. My name is Danielle Baker and thank you for being here today. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming my beautiful friend Danielle Reedy. Danielle is a 2016 Olympic synchronized swimmer, an inspiring author and speaker, as well as an achievement coach with a truly open heart and beautiful spirit. I first met Danielle back in 2019 when we were both living in Perth and I was working at an organic hair salon. Little did I know I would be stepping into the beautiful journey she now shares with her beautiful husband, Luca. So please let me welcome one of my dear soul sister friends, someone I deeply admire and love, and soon to be mama, Danielle Reedy.
Hello. Am I the first Danielle you've had on your podcast other than
Yes.
yourself?
I think
Yay.
you're actually the only Danielle in my life.
Ah, okay. Well, honored. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. I heard you and Luca speaking a couple weeks ago, and Luca was just like, "Oh my gosh, she's such a great interviewer." So I love a chat. So I'm so excited to be here.
I'm actually so excited to have you on here. You actually have been a person that I've wanted to get on here for a while because the Raw Light fam are very much based on women who are wanting to evolve themselves, to grow, to be passionate about their own conscious journey, to move into that direction, as well as doing their own healing. And it's very honest, raw, and real, hence the Raw Light podcast, being raw about being light and bright, but also the heavy stuff that comes with it as well. So thanks for being here. I thought maybe we would start with, where did you grow up, and can you paint a little picture of how little Danielle was from like the time of when you were born up until like teenage years?
Okay. So you can probably hear I'm not from Australia, even though that like pains me to say because all I've ever wanted in my life is Australian accent. So I was born in Vancouver, Canada. My parents and my whole family is actually Aussie. My parents are from Sydney and they immigrated to Canada back in the 70s. And I'm the youngest of five kids and I was born in Canada. And an interesting part of my childhood is that I have four older siblings, but my siblings were all teenagers when I was born. So, my mom is very adamant that I was not a mistake. I was planned. Basically, when my sister that's closest in age to me was 14, I was born, which is pretty rare. And so my oldest brother is we're born in the same month, so he's about to turn 52 or 53. So like he could literally be my dad. I somehow it's funny because some of my clients are people that I worked with are friends. I'm like, oh my gosh, your parent is younger than my brother. So I had this like really unique experience of growing up as like the youngest of five children, but also kind of like an only child. And because my mom was 43 when she had me, I feel like I always was like an older soul because I was around more mature people. My days were spent with like adults and listening to adult conversation. And I was a really bright, light little girl. I was actually watching, my dad got all our home videos changed to VHS recently. And had all these videos that I was watching of me like performing. I used to put on like shows. I'd be like magic shows and like, I don't know, talent shows and dance shows. And I've always been someone that's like such a performer, but I ironically am actually incredibly shy. And like everything inside of me is like an introvert. And I've had to work my whole life to be extroverted, and like to be friendly. And so part of my journey is I went through my childhood and I ended up in this sport of synchronized swimming, which long, unlikely, crazy story in twists and turns and unreal, like crazy ways led me 18 years later, 15 years later to go to the Olympics, which was never really what we thought would happen to me. But that was kind of like a piece of my childhood and what led me here.
Yep. And synchronized swimming ended up becoming quite big in your life as well, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest things that I liked hearing you say then was that you and your siblings, you grew up with older, basically in adult conversations. It's something I can relate to in my family because we were so isolated. All we had was each other and my parents. So then we would always have constant adult conversations. Do you feel that that's helped you in your life now with your work with women to be able to hold? You've always had a very like maturity since I've known you. Like you're very wise with words and how you think, and you're very much a good thinker and you have probably one of the best ways to explain to people how to be kind and open. Is that something that helped you, do you feel, in
Mm.
life?
Yeah, I think it did. Because I had this weird experience where I was just around a lot of adults, and I used to sit around the kitchen table when my dad's a super charismatic, hilarious, magnificent person. And he used to have just really, he's really likes to ask people questions,
Mm.
and challenge people's opinions. And
Yeah.
I find he's never really like, he's quite open-minded, but he has a strong opinion in his own sense, but he always wants to hear other people. So I just remember being young and growing up, and I just sit around the table, listening to all these like adult conversations
Yeah.
and listening to people challenge each other and question each other's perspectives, but like be respectful about it. And I think that it has led me to be a person that like questions things in a good way. Like, why is this the way things are? Like,
Yeah.
does it have to be the way things are?
Yeah.
And just see the world in a different way. I also, as I was growing up, my parents were like, they were, I love them, but very deeply. But like when I was a teenager, they were like kind of done with parenting. They
Yeah.
were kind of like, we're over this. And
Yeah.
so they started leaving me a lot. They leave
Oh,
me
yeah.
with my siblings. They go on vacation, they travel, like good on them. They're in like retirement age. And so I also had a lot of independence that was built up because, my parents would leave for 3 weeks, months at a time. I would be by myself or staying with somebody. And it just led me to have this sense of like independence and which my mom was so sad when I moved to Australia all those years ago, but I was like, you basically like primed me to be an independent adult, right? Because I was
Yeah.
like used to being left alone. And at the time I had this like, oh, I feel sorry for myself. But I'm so grateful that I had that experience because it taught me to like learn for myself. It taught me I had to learn how to like cook and clean. It's not like
Yeah.
my parents abandoned me, guys, but just like I was fine,
Fend for
but they just
yourself.
left a lot. Yeah, they were
Yeah.
kind of like, I could feel the last 2 years of me being a teenager in high school, they were like so ready for just to be done. And it led me to be this person that just sees the world in a different way and has a different perspective. And I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah. And for people that don't know, Danielle has such a great outlook on life, the way that she holds herself and the way that she speaks. And when she does speak, there is something about it that makes you listen because it comes from a true core emotional place that you can connect to. So if you haven't ever listened to any of her podcasts, I would go on and have a listen because the way that she speaks about her life, she's very honest, she's very raw, and it's something that now we can understand has come from her childhood, which is amazing. So you work with women, and what was your relationship with women growing up, and how has that shaped your journey, and why would you say it's important for women to have soul sisters in their lives?
Mm.
And what was the journey around that for
I
you?
love that question. So I grew up in synchronized swimming, which is a sport that is team oriented.
Yeah.
And it's also like a sport that's like a lot, given a lot more respect now, but growing up, it's like poked fun at a lot. And a lot of people just think that it's not a sport and all those things. Like you get in the pool and go upside down and tell me if you can do it because I bet you can't. I guarantee that you can't, right? And so I was in this sport where we had to learn how to work together and work with different personalities
Yeah.
and was forced into like this sense of teamwork.
Mm.
And I'm so grateful for that in hindsight. And like every team sport is incredible. But the thing about synchronized swimming is like, especially when I was at the national team level, you have to spend 8 hours a day, not just like in a team with each other. Like you literally, my teammates would be within a 1 meter radius of me each way. Like we would be so physically close to each other because that's what part of the sport is. And you have to work together to make this like routine, this choreography, these highlights, these lifts work. And so I grew up with this sense of like teamwork and not every personality that you work with in a team you get along with it. If anyone's been in a team sport or like in a workplace, like there's a quiet person, there's a leader, there's like a hothead, there's like a jokester, there's a person who's like super talented and just like gets by. Like there's all of these different personalities, and you have to learn to lean on each other. And then at the same time, I also went to an all girls school, and so I had this like really phenomenal perspective of like, how cool are women?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love about synchronized swimming is like it is a sport that's pioneered by women. Only men started to get into it in the past like 9 years.
Mm,
And there is not much else in the world that has been pioneered by women
mm,
in the sporting world,
yeah.
right? Like everything is pioneered by men, and we can do things that men can't do.
Yeah.
And we have like led a trailblaze a sport forward in a way that men have never done. And that is a really empowering thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the same time, one of the things I talk about with love is my mom is not a very empowered person.
Mm,
My mom is like very quiet, and she is very swayed in her opinions.
yeah.
She doesn't have a strong sense of self, and she doesn't have that strength that I now have cultivated. And I think seeing her and then being in this sport where I see strong women almost gave me the courage and the why to
Mm,
become a more empowered and strong woman.
yeah.
And a lot of people, I've had people ask me in the past, like, was there any women that you looked up to in your life? And I love my mom because she's my mom, but she wasn't a person that taught me to be a strong, powerful woman. I was taught by my synchronized swimming coaches, who were these coaches who are incredibly artistic.
Mm,
Like you have to be tapped into your feminine
yeah.
to
Yeah.
be an artistic person. Like to create the things that they create is beautiful, but
Mm,
also has this balance of the masculine where you have to be structured. And I had some bad coaches, but I had some incredible coaches that mentored me and taught me to believe that things were possible and showed me the power of like hard work and achieving my goals and all of that, and work ethic and teamwork and visualization and like inner belief work. And I really believe that like my sport has cultivated this kind of, I wouldn't say obsession, but like love of women, and especially like groups of women.
yeah.
There's something specifically magical when you bring a group of women together that is like unlike anything else. And it feels very natural, I think, to us as women. I
Mm,
was lying in bed last night with Luca, and I was just like, I was asking him all these questions, and he just started laughing. And I was like, what? He's like, oh my God, women talk so much. They ask so many questions. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. And like it was a funny conversation that we had, because even though we have an incredible relationship, it's like women just relate on a different level and a different energy. Like sometimes I'm like, Luca, what are you thinking about? And he's like, nothing, like literally nothing. You know what I mean? Like, whereas like ask a woman that at any time when she's staring off into space, I can guarantee you she's not thinking of nothing, right? Or he's thinking of sports. And I'm like, we're going a million miles a minute. And so I think all of that just combined to have this love of women and love of bringing groups together. And then, when I was also swimming, I was coaching. I started coaching little girls. I
mm,
teach them how to do synchronized swimming. And I saw this like amazing power of what it looks like to lead young women and show them that they can believe in themselves, especially when you're coaching sport or teaching kids a new skill, because like it's hard. It's really hard, but it's so amazing when you like you rear a little girl into knowing that like, you can do this. Like I know it's hard, but I know you can do this.
mm,
And it was such an honor to be able to teach so many young girls how to do my sport, but not just from the technical space, but from like the mindset and like the empowerment space. Because so much of what I loved about coaching
mm,
synchronized swimming was like the self-belief, the like I would teach them a visualization. I would teach them how to like go after their goals. I would like give them like pump up talks and like self-belief talks and get them all amped up. And like I loved that part of it.
yeah.
And it's funny, I went to this networking event a couple months ago, and we all stood up and introduced ourselves. And this one girl who introduced herself after me, she said to me, she's like, I'm so excited to be here because Danielle used to coach me. And she coached me. And when she coached me, I came first. And she's an amazing coach. And I like my jaw dropped because I haven't seen this girl in like 12 years. So like she's like 25 now, which makes me feel old. But like she was tiny. She was like a little girl when I saw her last. So like I didn't recognize her because she's like a full woman now. And it was such a beautiful moment to realize like even though like I've only been in this work officially for 5 years, I've also been doing it for like forever, because I have a young woman that was excited to meet me because like 12, 13, 14 years ago, I coached her and I inspired her. And like what a gift that is. So I think all of that led me into like the work that I do now. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, you did. Yeah,
Okay.
completely. Completely. Like really well too. Like you went into a really good depth of it because something that I've always loved about you, Danielle, is how like you pump everyone up. Like you made that impact so long ago, and then you're making me think about things that I've done along my way that's similar to what you've done, that's helped me understand that I have created an impact without actually realizing it. And doesn't have to be this big, massive thing all the time. It can be something that is small as well. And I think that's
Mm.
what's really empowering and powerful about what you just said. And I love it. I think it's amazing. I do. I think it's really amazing. So, how do you think that it shaped you as you went along to really want to find soul sisters out there who aren't into gossip and bitching? Because this is a huge thing that I've spoken about on my podcast, and it's a huge thing that a lot of women actually contact me privately, that privately contacts me, and um, like yeah, so they want to know a little bit more, and I have spoken about it personally from my point of view, finding and cultivating women who are on that trajectory that you're on and are on that journey of self-belief and love and those types of things.
Mm. So to be completely raw, I wasn't always that person. And I think that I experienced being on the other side of being like, I'm just going to call myself like a toxic bitch many years ago. Not, and that was out of an experience that I had with another teammate of mine who was a friend, that I talk about in the journey of my book. And one of the things that I realized in that process is I was really, it was an unhealthy friendship situation, basically, where we were teammates and she was super unkind to me. But at the same time, I was feeding into it by playing into the toxic narrative of like loving talking about her behind her back
Yeah.
and like just being in that. If you've ever been sucked into the toxic gossip energy, there's kind of this energy of like loving it,
Mm.
like, and it's like negative, but it's like addictive. And I was so hurt by so many of the things that she did to me that I was feeding into this. Like, I just loved to talk about her behind her back. And I take responsibility for that. And I had this moment one day where we were having a lot of issues. And it wasn't just me, there was other teammates that were having a lot of issues with her. And I had this moment one day, I was sitting for Perth people, Beatty Park pool, and at the chairs. And we were talking about like all the ways that we were super frustrated with her for like an hour without her there. And I remember leaving and I had this sense of like, it doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel good.
Mm.
Like this feels kind of gross, even
Mm.
though there's part of me that loves being in it. It's kind of like an addiction. Like if you ever like if you're like stuck on a slot machine or you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
eating food that doesn't, you're like in the moment you like it, but it doesn't actually feel good. And through a lot of hard self reflection, even though I felt like a really big victim in that friendship journey, I had to realize that I was also playing into the toxicity. And that was a shitty thing to think because I think sometimes we do this thing in our mind where we make ourselves the angel and the other people the devil. Right? We
Yeah,
do that. We're like,
yeah, yeah,
I'm like hard done by and I'm
yeah,
totally fine and they're the
yeah.
devil. Right? Not to negate the shitty things that she did do to me, but
Yeah.
also like to know that I played a role in that. And that was a really hard realization. So I've been there personally.
Mm.
And I think there gets to a point where you realize it doesn't feel good. And really, ultimately, what you have to do is check yourself as like, why are you tolerating those conversations, first of all? Because usually it's a sense of like insecurity or there's something that you're unhappy with. I was ultimately unhappy with how she was treating me, but I
Yeah,
wasn't doing anything about that.
yeah,
So I have to take responsibility that I wasn't taking action in that,
yeah,
even though I was being treated unfairly.
yeah.
Um, and then see yourself in that.
Mm.
And then you have to like take responsibility for that shit and then stop tolerating those
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if somebody wants to talk about that, but like, and you don't play into it, they're just going to stop because they're going to realize that you're not feeding into the energy,
Yeah.
right? They're going to realize that you're not dipping into that pile. And then you start to, everyone can change, right? Maybe those people change. You start to actively put the energy out that you're going to attract women, that the conversations aren't about bitching about other women, but the conversations are about, what are your goals? What are your dreams? Like, what's going on in your life? Like, what are the things that you're working through? What are the things that excite you? And start putting yourself in rooms with people like that. After, in 2018, I was in a relationship for about 4 or 5 years, and I left that relationship, and I realized that also, other than my teammates, all of my friends were his friends. And so obviously they were on his side of the breakup, which is totally fair. And I realized, I was like, I need to make more friends. And so I went on this journey of like, I was in Perth and I was like, I need to meet new people. And I was scared shitless. Like, I had my bestie roommate, Becky. But other than that, I like was like, I need to put myself out there. I remember I was going on like Eventbrite and looking at women's meetups. I was going on meetup.com. I was going on like Friends Perth and like going on friendship dates with people. I was like going to events, and I was scared shitless because remember, I say that like I am an introvert, but I was just going up to people at events and be like, hi, I'm Danielle. Like, nice to meet you. And what I've realized through putting myself out of my comfort zone for so many years is like, other people are super nervous to introduce themselves and meet people too. But ultimately, like, adults are basically like big kids on the inside, you know, and like, you know, I'm sure like Oakley isn't speaking too much yet, but like, you've seen little kids, there's a point where they just go up to another kid at the park and you're like, hey, you want to be my friend? Like, we've kind of got to do the same thing, you know. And if anything, kids are better at it because they have less fears, but us as adults just need to kind of put ourselves out there. And so my advice is, if you're wanting to like shift that energy in your friendships, is first you got to take responsibility for your own shit, which is very uncomfortable. And then secondly, like, you can't sit in your room at home and be sorry for yourself that you're not meeting anyone if you're not doing anything about it. And even though it's incredibly uncomfortable, and every time I was about to like go meet up with a new friend or go to a new event, I was like almost talked myself out of it every single time, I still decided to go. And I've met through the ripple of that, I met beautiful people. So I think that starts to change it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful how you said that and all of that. And I think that even now as an adult, for me, from what you've said, I had something recently that came up and it made me realize that I hadn't looked at myself in a while to see where I needed to do my work on myself again. So I sat down and now I'm journaling every day again. And something that I have spoken about on my podcast before that I will touch on now is, I am very honest on there, but I will be honest, very honest with Danielle as well, is I had a recent moment of catching myself in that spot that you said you were in a while ago. And I have never done that in a really, really long time. And I had to ask myself why this was coming up in my life and why I needed to take a look at myself again and what I hadn't healed or what I needed to move on from. And also, it was an old pattern that came up for me to see that it no longer served me anymore, and that I wanted to not be in that energy anymore. And it was a small second and a small comment that I made to someone that really upset them. And it ended up sending a massive trajectory of a friendship not being a friendship anymore. And it's kind of like one of those things where I took ownership and I realized that I was playing a part that was very victim mentality. And I think the biggest thing in life we can do is take radical responsibility. And I got that word from Luca and I've been using it ever since, is like really taking as a woman that I feel like women don't want to take responsibility sometimes and we want to blame other women. And it's very important to see where we can grow in ourselves again to be able to expand ourselves. And ever since I sat down with myself and within that moment of realizing why I was playing that part, where I was playing a victim and why it was coming up, it really made me shift my whole energy and was just like, wow, okay, this is going to leave my body and this is okay. Because I'd recognized it, I stood with it and felt in myself and recognized it without beating around the bush. I find
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of women want to beat around the bush and not actually see, like, hey, I've played this role in my life. I've done this as a woman. I need to accept that and own that as well. And also, having, if you're a mum listening to this and you have a little girl or a daughter, they bring up your childhood wounds as well in so many ways. So recognizing when that comes up as well can also be an old little wound from another little small thing that's happened to you over the childhood or over teenagehood, and that still comes up as a mum and as a woman. So I really like everything that you've said because I can relate to that in my own way recently, and just like, I'm going to have days, and I make this really clear with my clients and women as well. I'm not perfect. I'm going to have really bad days, and I'm going to need to look at myself again and realize what patterns I'm playing, and then stop those patterns and be a better person and a better human.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where if you are a woman that is in this position and looking for other women who are more wanting to be more aligned with you, going and doing what Danielle said about putting yourself out there as and uncomfortable as it is, and going to those yoga classes or going to those boot camp workouts or going to whatever makes you feel good. Do you think, Danielle, is that something that, like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever aligns with women
100%.
and makes them feel good, and then they can, then you meet people from there, and then you show up the next week and the next week, and then you bring yourself, but bring your authentic version of you and see how you show up in those areas as well. Would you say, Danielle, was that tough to
100%.
really show up in those ways, especially if you're trying to get away from an old pattern? How would you suggest maybe to kind of like that you see in your women, or that you work with? How would that work?
Yeah, because the reality is, like, if you have toxic people in your life, it's because it's in you
Yeah.
too, right? And that's like the hard reality to realize, that it's like it's in your reality because there's something within you that's within them. And so if you want to let go of them, you have to let go of that in yourself.
Mm.
And then as well, you have to put yourself out there, but not just once,
Yeah.
right? Like it's pretty crazy. In my 20s, I lived on 4 different continents. I lived in Copenhagen, in Denmark for a while. I lived in Perth, and I moved to Bali. And so I've been someone who's consistently gotten up, left my hometown, and like gone to a place where I'm like, I don't know anybody, like
Yeah.
literally nobody. And I've had to like had this practice of meeting new people. And again, I am inherently an introverted person. Like I
Yeah.
have to hype myself up before I go to these things. But I also, especially looking back at my experience in Perth, because I have such a beautiful community of people there still,
Mm.
or Western Australia, is that like it's not that I just like went to like one workout class or like one event. Like because I think sometimes we're like, oh, I went to one, I didn't meet anyone. Oh, like it's not meant to be. It's well, no, that's not how it works. I think first of all, you have to open your heart to
Yeah.
meeting new people,
Mm.
because who knows, someday you could sit down in a hairdressing chair and meet like a beautiful friend who ends up coming to your wedding and you being like godparent of her child. Like that's at you, right? But
Yeah.
like at time, I didn't go to an event to meet you. I was in an energy of like, I'm open to meeting new
Yeah.
people. And I think that it's like the same thing with, I remember I did this even with dating. Like I was working on getting over my ex, and I was like, I'm going to go on Bumble,
Mm.
not because I like need to find the love of my life right now, but just because like I want to be in the energy of like meeting somebody new.
Yeah.
And then I ended up meeting Luca in a natural way.
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing goes with friendships.
Mm.
And then when you do go to events, like be the person, like this is put your phone away. Okay, put your phone away, because the scrolling is a good distraction. And I challenge you to even like go to an event or go to a workout class and don't take a friend, because when we take a friend, we backpack each other and we life jacket each other, and we're like, you just stick together with your friend and you don't meet anyone new, and then it's intimidating to meet the new people because you're like this little couple together.
Mm.
But go by yourself and like sit down or just walk up to somebody and be like, hey, I'm so and so, really nice to meet you. Like, and also if you're a more intuitive person, you're going to start to pick up like, oh, that person's energy is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like I like vibe with that. I went to had to do the same thing moving back to Vancouver, because I'm from Vancouver, but I left for a majority of my 20s and I moved back in COVID,
Mm.
and Canada was crazy with lockdown and stuff. And for a couple years, I was like, there's nobody here like me, which is stupid. Like there's 2 million people in Vancouver. That's not true, right? It's just not true.
Yeah.
And so when I was saying that to myself, I wasn't seeing it. I wasn't seeing anyone that was like me. And then my intention for this year was like, I'm going to meet new friends in Vancouver. I'm going to put myself out there. And I went to this beginning of January, I went to this one event. Again, so nervous, almost didn't go, really didn't want to go. And I was chatting with all these women. People were lovely. And then I saw this girl that I was like across the room, and I was like, I just like her energy.
Yeah.
And like after about an hour, I went up to her and I was like, I just feel like I have to talk to you. And then she goes, I feel like I have to talk to you too. And she was like wearing this like snake necklace. And I was like, you're a tantra something. Like you do something tantra. Like I just knew it. And she did. Just by the way, she was wearing this beautiful red dress and like she gave off that vibe. And then she's been a beautiful friend that I've created this year that we've only been friends for like 9 months. But I met her by opening up my energy, by going to an event, and then following my intuition of like, I feel like I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
And follow that, because you're going to meet the right people. Like the same thing happened with one of my best friends, Becky. And the people that listen to this podcast are going to be intuitively aligned people.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a feeling, right, of who you're going to need to talk to, but you need to put yourself in the environment and open your energy up to meeting those people.
Yeah. I love what you said. I've done that before too, and it's actually quite fun. I actually love going to events and doing it and meeting
Yeah.
quite a few people. And like you can tell if they're vibing with you, they might have like a little light, bright little sense about them, and your energy is like, wow, this person, I feel really deeply connected to them. Some people who, if you go to events and aren't very switched on, but like being at events, they might freak out for a couple of seconds, but then they go through the motions of being like, oh yeah, I am. Yeah. You know, sometimes it does take people a little bit as well to like warm up and open up to themselves. So yeah, thanks for saying that. And thanks for giving advice as well, because that's great. That's wonderful advice, like going to quite a few places. And I actually I used to rather go on my own to places because I really liked, I just really liked meeting people and making my own friends. I've never been a person that liked to stay in like the group of people and never not having other types of friends.
And there's so many cool people out there. Like I can say this as somebody who has lived in on 4 different continents in my 20s, and then I also have clients like all over the world. Like there is cool people everywhere you are. I had this beautiful client that came to our retreat last year, and this is a beautiful example of this. She's from LA, right? Okay, like if we think about like the woo-woo hotspot of the world, other than like Bali and maybe Tulum, like LA people, they're there, right? The woo-woo, open-minded, personal development people, they exist in LA. She comes to our retreat and she says to me, she's like, there's just nobody like this in LA. And I was like, you're wrong. You are wrong. I was like, I love you, but you are 100% wrong. I said, you just haven't been open to meeting them.
Yeah.
And I said to her, when you go back after this retreat, it would change your life. It was beautiful. I guarantee, put yourself out there. You're going to find these people, because I know that if they're anywhere in the world, they're in LA, but I also know that they're in the small towns, and they're in fucking Geraldton and they're in like all the little towns in Western Australia. Like they are everywhere. All of these amazing people are everywhere, but you have to open yourself up to finding them. And it's so funny how like that was such an amazing, like fascinating example of she didn't believe that they were out there, and she wasn't open to meeting them. So in the mecca of like spiritually aligned personal development people, she didn't meet anyone. And so when she went back and she's like, met all these cool people, and I'm like, yeah, of course.
Because you opened up.
Because you open up. Yeah.
I love that so much. Hey, I honestly love that. I'm actually, these days as I'm getting older, I'm more picky than I have. I'm more picky than I have been in the past, because I've had experiences of connecting with people that didn't align with me, and then it ended up kind of blowing up in my face with them talking behind my back and getting back to me, and I felt very hurt for a very long time. Obviously, we've been living up north for a really long time. We're going to make a change next year, but it's actually made me feel, in the last like couple of years after a few things happening, it's actually made me realize that I have closed down myself a little bit, because I'm very particular about who I let into my life, mainly because I've got a daughter and a family now, but also I think when I've gone and let everybody in my life, like, it's just wondering what you think about that in general, is when you go and you let everybody in your life and then you're like, oh no, I've let this person in and they've done this and they've done that to me. It's been a few things that I've had to look at in my life. And I know that those types of things can come up for women as well. Just trying to figure out how to stay open with your heart, even when you know that you were in a not very good place before and you attracted some people and you got hurt and those types of things. So I guess it just means staying open, right? Just being open to,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think like you probably attract those people because you need to learn a lesson.
Oh yeah,
Like,
totally.
but if you learn the lesson, like I've had toxic friendship blow ups in my face, but
Mm,
I also realized I was in a different energy when that
yeah,
happened. And like I was in an energy of like, I'll do anything for you. Like, I just want to make sure that you're okay. I just want to make sure that you're like loved and whole. Like, let's be besties forever. Like it was that there was like a toxic energy that I had. So it's
yeah,
like, of course, I attracted that person.
yeah, yeah.
And then when I started to heal that shit in myself,
Mm.
like I was saying to Luca, like, I don't have any toxic people in my life.
Yeah,
Like I literally have like the coolest group of people. And I also the new friends that I now attract are
yeah,
people that are super respective of boundaries.
yeah,
Cause it's
yeah,
like, yeah, most of
yeah.
my I like love the work that I do. I love my clients. I love my husband. I love doing all of that. And
Mm.
like I don't have this, and I'm even becoming a mom. I'll have even less space. Like I don't have the space to hang out with someone every day or you text someone every day, but
Mhm.
I absolutely need girl time.
Yeah,
And it's funny how I'm in an energy now where I'm like naturally attracting people that are in those spaces anyways,
yeah,
where we'll catch up once a month
yeah,
or, and we'll text here and there or we'll send each other memes. And that's so fulfilling.
yeah,
And it's not, there's no drainingness
yeah,
because that's the energy that I've cultivated so that I
mhm,
naturally bring those people forward. So
yeah,
I'd say if you're attracting those people or you've been in a place where you've done that before, is like, be really aware of what the lesson you needed to learn in that friendship situation.
mm,
And if you've learned it,
mm.
those they're not coming, you're not even going to see them.
Yeah,
Like you're going to be in a different frequency where you're not even going to, like, you aren't even going to attract those people.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. And I agree with you because I feel like that's what's happened to me recently. It was kind of like a bit of it was actually for my own good. It was
Yeah,
actually for
it
my
usually
own,
is,
yeah, it
right?
was for me, not to me, it was
Yeah.
definitely for me. So anybody that's going through those types of scenarios, it's always for you. Remember that. Even if you think it's the hardest time in your life, those relationships leave for you to learn, for them to learn, for you both to transition. So your you work your work centers around empowering and coaching women. What sparks this passion of supporting women, and what is fueling your mission right now? What would be your biggest mission right now with women? And also your synchronized swimming. Let's talk about that for a moment as well, combined in that. Did that spark your passion to go and help women after you finished, or did you feel lost, or did you kind of always know after synchronizing that you would kind of go down the road of empowering women, or did it just kind of flow, and were you scared to
Mm.
start that and those types of things?
I love that. I love that we've gotten this. Usually, like in podcasts, I've told my whole story, and then they ask a whole bunch of other questions. But I love that we haven't even touched on this. So, a little background for my synchronized swimming journey, which has led me into my why, which is why I do the work with women I do now. Is I was never very good.
Mm,
Wasn't a good athlete. My book is literally called The Unlikely Olympian. I struggle with my self worth. I struggle with my confidence. I struggle with my body image. I struggle with my binge eating. I struggled to just love myself. I hated myself when I was a teenager. And I think part of that was like my soul lessons. Part
mm,
of that is stuff that has been passed down from my mom's
yeah,
relationship with herself.
totally get that.
I think part of it is just what I had to learn in this lifetime. But I had really low confidence and a high level of self hatred,
Mm,
and just really didn't think I would go anywhere.
mm,
And so a, a crazy turn of events led me to have the opportunity basically to try out for the Australian national synchronized swimming team. Like I said, my parents are Aussie, so I have dual citizenship, even though I was born in Canada. And it was insane. Like if you looked at all the qualifications that like would have made me good enough, like there was a laundry list of things that was like, there's no way she could do this. Like
mm,
not only when I got this opportunity that came my way, I had a really bad concussion that made me drop out of university. And ironically, I was also at a space in my life where I was questioning what I was doing. Like I
mm,
was going to university, I was studying art history, and I was like, is this really what I want to do? Like, do I want to be an art historian? Like, don't get me wrong, art is awesome, but Like it didn't excite me. I always had this desire to help people. I used to say when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a professional friend.
Mm,
And the way that I did that for many years in friendship is I did it through a sense of martyrdom, through
mm,
a sense of wanting to save people, wanting to save friends. I would attract um, women that had hurt challenging circumstances, friends that had challenging circumstances, and I would try and love them so much that their hurt would go away. But
mm,
what I was doing in that is I was um not valuing myself, and it led to these situations blowing up in my face. And what I had to learn through this whole experience is I had to put myself first, and I
mm,
had to value myself first, and I couldn't love other people without loving myself. And so I went on this journey where I decided to take this massive leap
mm.
to basically move from Vancouver, Canada to Perth, which
Yeah.
is very far, and leave everything behind, leave everyone behind, and go after this crazy, wild, impossible dream, which everyone judged me for. Everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone doubted me, the high possibility of failure, but I was just willing to go all in on something crazy and wild. And while I was on this journey, I had many beautiful epiphanies. But part of the reason that I decided why I wanted to do this is like I wanted to show people what was possible,
Mm,
and I didn't want to just be a motivator that hadn't done anything in their life. I
mm,
didn't want to be like a helper that hadn't done anything. I wanted to be someone that could motivate people and help people, but
mm.
had also could have the capacity to be like, this is what I've done.
Yeah.
So like I've done it, so you can listen to me. There's all those people that like cheer people on, but they haven't done anything in their own life.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't have to go out to the Olympics to to have done something. And I don't mean it that way, but I wanted to do something courageous. And this was just kind of my soul's journey and soul's path.
Yeah.
And in that process, I also built up my self worth. And I
Mm,
also started to love myself more. And I also started to learn so much and meet new people and change my brain. And I started to get better. And I ended up making the Olympic team. I ended up competing at the Olympic Games, which I never in my wildest dreams thought I would do. And then I was on the team for 5 years. I went to 3 world championships. I went to the Olympics, and I competed in 2019, making history for my sport, being Australia's first mixed duet. And in this whole thing, I found a deeper reason why, because I realized that it's amazing to do it for yourself. It's amazing to be an athlete, but the coolest thing in the world is contribution. And
mm,
the coolest thing in the world is helping other people.
yeah.
But before we help others, we have to help ourselves. So this one little story that I'll share is I was in the lead up to Olympic team trials. Olympic team trials were at the beginning of April in 2016.
Mm,
And I was at this space where I was either going to fail and
mm,
fall flat on my face and like at this point, everything that I sacrificed, I moved across the world. I was in a ton of debt. I like left everyone behind. I dropped out of university. I didn't have a job. I was like a 23-year-old. Basically, this was my all in. And I was either going to completely fail at that, and that was going to be it, or I was going to make the Olympics. And at this point, people are starting to believe in me, right? They're like, oh my God, she might actually pull this off. Like, she might actually do this. Like, my parents are like looking at tickets to Rio. Like, people are like cheering me on. People are like thinking that I'm going to pull it off. And I was journaling a week before Olympic team trials where I had this moment of like, what if I actually fail at this?
mm,
Because one of the things that I say is I would rather try and fail than always wonder what if. But I was faced with the sense of failure. Like it was looking at me in the face. And I realized in that moment that it actually was never about me making the Olympics,
mm.
but it was about me proving to myself that I was good enough.
Yeah.
And I did that on the pursuit of something courageous, and by putting myself out of my comfort zone, and by working towards something that I was proud of. And I realized that I had to take my self-worth off of the outcome,
Mm,
because if I was waiting to feel worthy until I hit a certain benchmark, I was going to be waiting my whole life.
yeah.
And I realized that I needed to feel worthy then, as I was, no matter what the outcome was. And it's also like a beautiful like parallel to manifestation,
Mm,
because I realized I was like, of course I want this. Of course I want to go to the Olympics, but I'm not going to let it wobble the worth that I know is inside of me. And so I went into those Olympic team trials. I gave it everything that I could, and I released expectation, and then I made the Olympic team. And the reason that I share that is like, I think sometimes as women, we go for personal goals, whether that be like a weight that we want to achieve, whether that be a savings we want to achieve, whether that be like a business we want to achieve, whether that be some whatever outcome, like even like a marriage or children or whatever. And we go, oh, when I hit this benchmark, I'm going to feel good enough.
Mm.
And if we live our life like that, we're going to be running on a treadmill forever
Mm.
because honey, you're not going to feel good enough when you get there because then you're going to be like, oh, I thought something magical would happen. We seem to do this thing in life because we have this like pill popping culture,
Mm.
right? Like you take a Panadol and then your headache goes away,
Yeah.
right? So we think that we're going to hit something and we're going to feel something different. Let me like just break the like the illusion for you. You're not going to feel any different. You're not going to feel any different unless you work on yourself on the inside. I used to think that like if I became an Olympian, I'd walk around every day like it was fucking sunshine, like, and that I felt way more confident. And like, don't get me wrong, being an Olympian is really cool, but I'm still me. I'm still the same person I was before, and I had to take my worth off of my outcome. And so I learned so much in my Olympic journey. And I realized that I wanted other women to realize how capable they were. Because if I was a nobody and I became an Olympian, like, just imagine what all of us can do. And I truly believe that women can change the world.
Mm.
I believe that we're powerful, we're intuitive, we're brave, we're wise, we're courageous.
Mm.
We have so much within us. We have so much heart that the world needs. But the unfortunate thing is that too many women spend too long beating themselves up in their mind
Mm.
about what they're not, or how they're not good enough, or how they're not worthy enough. And we need to take our mental capacity off of all the shit that we're beating ourselves up for so that we can actually focus on our dreams and our goals that are going to change this fucking world.
Mm.
Because if women are going to change the world, we can't spend 95% of our mental energy on beating ourselves up, which too many women do.
Mm.
And so I realized that on my journey, and it gave me this why of wanting to do this work because I grew up in a sport where I was shown how amazing women are. We do things that men don't do.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in a lot of areas in the world.
Yeah.
We defy physics. We throw women out of the water. Like, it's fucking epic. And so like I see how epic women are, but we have to get out of our own way. And so that kind of led me into why I do the work that I do now.
Yeah, that is so powerful and so passionate. And like it's making me really like think about certain things that are holding me back at the moment for my work and like why am I thinking like that? And why do I not feel good enough? Because exactly what you said, why do I not feel good enough? You know, like where has that come from and where, and you know, that's really funny that you said the whole how women just expect things just like this. It's something that I talk to my clients about and they come to me and they're like, I just want a quick fix to fix this. And I'm like, it's not going to be a quick fix though. There is some quick fixes if it's a simple thing. There's not many things that are quick fixes. Exactly like, for example, people, especially in the work that I do, I see people going and doing mushrooms, ayahuasca, and substances, which is totally fine. Have nothing against it. Think in the right circumstance, they are fantastic. But instead of doing 1 and 2 first, we go to 3. So instead of working on our inner self and taking our time to really open ourselves up and develop ourselves mentally, cognitively, like all those types of things, we go from miss 1 and 2 and go straight for, I'm just going to take this and then it's going to open me up and I'm going to heal everything that I need to. And then that's it. And then we become addictive to that and that way of opening up. That's just my opinion and what I have found.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Like, and I was of the same thing. Like, I used to think when I first started to get into like the healing work, I was like, and don't get me wrong, I love Reiki. Reiki
Yeah.
is amazing. But I was like, I'm just going to go to one Reiki session and then
Yeah.
I'm going to be all good. And it's like, no, hon, like I still got to talk about my feelings. Like, don't think that like Reiki is incredible and it's powerful, but it is not going to change your life unless you also learn how to face your shadow and all of that stuff. It works together. It's not a one and done, right?
So that's something that I teach my clients, and it's something I'm building at the moment in one of my courses is I coach and we work with energy and, you know, healing and Reiki and those things, modalities. And we use, you know, the coaching part of it too, because what happens is a lot of women think they should be in their light constantly. And if they do something bad, then it's shown upon them to be bad. Like I've had quite a few clients kind of go into, oh, but you're bringing this out in me. And I said, good. see this part of you. It is a beautiful, a lot of people don't want to see their dark part. And this is what we're coming about, taking radical raw responsibility on. This is my dark part. This is all of me. I've got these parts too, yeah? I can be aggressive sometimes. I can be, overly emotional sometimes to the point where it might hurt somebody or I say the wrong thing. That is okay. It's all part of being a woman. It's all part of accepting ourselves. And yes, you can do the Reiki part, great. But also, are you going to do the inner work on seeing, like, where am I reflecting to my husband? Where am I reflecting to my friends and my family as well? When you heal those parts of yourself, and like you really went in by the sounds of it and really went into yourself and was like, it's not going to define me if I go to the Olympics or not. And it's not going to be the be all end all, but it's going to be, it became a big part of your story and your journey and your why to be helping and empowering women now. And if women don't know or want to read your book, it's The Unlikely Olympian. And can people still get a hold of that book at all? Is there still?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon, like on anywhere in the world if you're wanting to order it. But like, I totally agree with you. Like, we all have nasty shit inside of us. Like, we all have dark shadows in our closet. And the more that we come to accept that, like, the more powerful we can be and like not shame those parts of ourselves. It's so liberating too. Like, as you would know, like when you start to look at those parts of ourselves and realize that none of us are perfect. Like, I used to say that I like don't have anger inside of me. And it's like, oh honey, like, oh my gosh, people pleasers are sometimes some of the most angry, repressed people in the world because they don't actually like, it's actually better to be, there's like erupters and stuffers. It's actually better to be an erupter, even though it's not as helpful for your relationships, because at least you're expressing your anger. But like stuffers, which are usually like people pleasers, like that's not good. It manifests in your body. Like, I remember one time I was so angry at my ex because he was really drunk and he wasn't listening to me and he wasn't he was just being a stupid drunk person, which can be super annoying. And I was like, he wasn't listening to me, and I got so angry because I was trying to be nice, and all of a sudden I went and I hit on the side of the bed. I didn't hit him, but I hit on the side of the bed because I was like, you're not hearing me. And then afterwards I was like, oh my god, where did that come from? Like, I don't do that. I'm a nice person. And I had to really develop this relationship with like anger that, first of all, it's not bad. It's actually like, violence is bad. Violence is the difference between anger and violence. Anger is a feeling. Violence is when you direct it towards somebody. We don't accept violence, but everyone feels anger. And I think women inherently also are connected with anger too, because even if I need to let some anger out, I need to kind of stimulate that energy inside of me. I think about what has been done, how women have been repressed and oppressed for hundreds of years, and that makes me fucking angry, right? Like, I think about how our voices have been muffled, how we've been abused physically, sexually, spiritually, in so many ways, and we are powerful divine creatures, and only in the past 150 years we're really allowing ourselves to shine. Like, we have anger deep in our like feminine lineage. Like, because we haven't had a chance to let it out. Like, we have to, as women, let it out, whether that is through a screaming session, whether that is through breath work, whether that is through like screaming in your room and doing some sacred anger work. But it's healthy and it's healing. And then the beautiful part of anger too is like, it's not permanent. You're going to feel it and then you're going to move through it. Usually you're going to tap into some sadness and then you're going to feel so much better on the other side.
So the way that I always share with my clients is, if you're angry, there's sadness underneath. So figure out and pinpoint the sadness. So we go back and pinpoint the sadness so your anger can come out. And why is it coming out? Where has it come out? And I've actually done this work on myself for years. This is something that I now teach women, is we go through, where is your sadness and how to work through it with anger? Because I was an explosive person, a very explosive person. And it was because when I was little, I didn't feel heard.
It's the Italian in you.
Yeah, it's got the old Italian. As I'm talking and waving my hands around. But when I was little, I didn't feel heard or seen by my parents. And when I was sexually assaulted and brought something to attention to them, it was kind of not brushed off, but they didn't realize what I was kind of saying to them because I didn't directly say it to them. So that can build up over years to anger, And then I went to boarding school and I didn't like it. That built up anger. And then, my mum and I used to have explosive fights because my mum could not. I love my mum very much. Now we've had conversations that are very much about our lineage, and she talks to me about my grandma and how she didn't teach her things. And then she's recently said to me, looking at me in Oakley, apologized to me that she didn't validate my feelings when I was younger, and that went straight to anger. And I've had to work on that with Oakley because I have outbursts sometimes, and I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? So natural as a mum to go through those stages, and we're so guilting on ourselves for it. And you can sit down and go, hey, where in my life right now is this coming from? Like, I've been journaling a lot more recently and really seeing where some things as a mum has come up for me, like I've just said, of like, I spend really deep time doing the gentle parenting and doing the best I can, and then it explodes into something huge when I feel that I haven't been heard, and it stems back from when I was younger. So it's brought up like, my own childhood wounds. So all I'm saying in general as well, and I think you can relate as well, is it's okay to have those moments, and it's just about dealing with them and really doing the work. I think we want to scave on the work. We want to scave on being seen. We want to scave on being like hearing, ourselves really be honest with ourselves. And I have many ways that I deal. I mean, like yourself, I've been on a journey for a very long time on discovering myself, and bit after bit and stage after stage discovering more and more. And that is when you as a woman can really step into your power, once you've realized that you've had all these amazing steps happen to you, so that you can really move forward and be a bright light in the world. And you don't have to be an Olympian, or you don't have to do what I do to do that. You can be an empowered, beautiful woman who steps out and is a lawyer, who goes to the post office and works, who is a hairdresser, who is everybody. And I think we think that we need to have some big miracle or something big to happen to us. Do you find that a lot of women say that to you, Danielle, that they...
I think that we just like as humans, like we try and avoid pain and hard things.
Yeah.
Like we just naturally want to, because we have this association that pain is bad. And of course, like I had this really beautiful passage from a book that I read about this lady. It's called The Girl Who Fell from the Sky. Her name's M. Carey. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's actually an Aussie, and she fell and she had a skydiving accident. Yeah, she's amazing.
Podcast. I heard her on a podcast.
Her book is incredible, and she has this one piece where she talks about pain. And for reference, she is a walking paraplegic. So she learned to walk again, but she actually has no feeling in the bottom half of her body. So she has to use a catheter to pee every day. And so she can't feel anything in her feet. And so she talks about how she got this really bad wound on the bottom of her foot because she didn't realize that she stepped on something.
Yeah.
And then she didn't realize that the wound festered. And so she shares this beautiful kind of perspective of how like pain isn't bad. It's just telling us some piece of information that we need to do something with it, because pain was taken away from her in her lower half of her body, and she stepped on something and she didn't realize it was there, and so therefore it festered, and she almost like lost her leg after all of this accident because her body couldn't feel the pain. And so the reason that I say that is like, if you're feeling pain in some area, whether that be emotional, physical, it's just a sign that we need to pay attention. And if we learn to not be so afraid of it and actually delve into it, it's going to be so much more powerful. Because, I use this example, like, it's so often we think if we're at a fork in a road, whether it be like maybe you're leaving a relationship, or maybe you're changing a job, or maybe you're having a change of lifestyle, or moving cities or homes or whatever, like we think that we have a choice between an easy and a hard, right? We think like, oh, this is the hard and valiant path and this is the easier path. But really it's a choice between a hard and hard. We think we have an easy and a hard, but we actually have the choice between a hard and a hard, because there's hard in both circumstances. Say you're in a relationship that's unhealthy and you need to leave, like it's going to be fucking hard to leave, but it's also going to be really hard to stay. But you have to ask yourself, which hard would you rather live with? And that's something that I've like had to learn, because like I'm 8 months pregnant and like I went to the gym this morning. I didn't really want to go to the gym. Like the workouts are getting harder, but in my mind, I'm like, it's hard for me to go to the gym. And yes, I'm being kind to myself and all of that. But I also know it's harder for me to not do anything because
Yeah.
I've realized that if I don't move my body, I get more stiff every day.
Mm,
And so I have to choose between what hard do I want to live with.
mm,
So if we start to build our sense of resilience and stop avoiding hard shit, like we are going to like you're going to overcome hard stuff way faster,
oh
because
yeah.
also know that if you go straight into the eye of the needle,
Mm.
like you're going to move through things much quicker, and it's usually when we avoid the hard shit that it elongates, and then it just makes our whole life way more fucking complicated, you
It
know?
blows up into something big that doesn't need to be big, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that happens, I think a lot of people feel that as well. They kind of go down the path, and I've been there too. You go down the path of avoidment for, I'm just going to push this
Mm-hmm.
emotion over here, and then it festers into a headache, or it festers
Mm-hmm.
into, for me, when I have my period, if I don't deal with my emotions or anything that comes up, it festers into a headache. That's always the way it's been for me, and that's all the way that it will kind of carry on. So thank you for answering that. I think that's a very beautiful answer to that question. I do have one more question for you, a couple more, but one specific one is we had Luca on last week, and a lot of women really liked the way that he was talking about men, and they really enjoyed that explanation that we went through. I would like to know from your point of view. I've known you guys for a really long time and I know your story, but I really want to know from Danielle's point of view. Luca did talk about some hard and tough times that you guys went through. Can you really explain to people what it's like to be in a very open, conscious relationship and how challenging some parts might be for the women as well? Because I have been through this with my husband, and there's no fault of own. We both chose to be together. We are soulmates. We aligned this life and we have lifted together. But man, there's some sticky shit that comes up and it's really tough. And sometimes it's really like shining in your face shit that you don't want to see. Can you expand on how that relationship made you dive deeper into your self-love and
Mm.
how you would now speak to your old self and speak to any woman that's kind of in a state of, I've got this beautiful relationship, but we're in a really tough spot or something
Mm.
along those lines?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So I spoke about this a bit this past weekend when I was speaking at a retreat, but one of the things that has been a beautiful challenge is, if you've heard parts of Luca's story, I didn't realize that when I met Luca and the journey that I would go on is we have been through this beautiful journey together of helping him heal his like trauma and his PTSD. Of course, I have things, but he grew up in a domestic violence household. He has a lot more of that.
Yeah.
And so that led to him having like patterns
Mm.
that he is going to play out. And I think in relationships, because I was previously in an unaligned relationship, and with Luca, I was like, I know he's my person, but I also am willing to fight this battle with him.
Mm.
And I think that this is an important thing to note. Like, you're going to fight battles in your relationship, but you have to both be all in on fighting that battle.
Yeah.
My previous relationship, my ex wasn't, he didn't want to fight the battle, and I was like, let's fight this thing that he was going through. He didn't want to fight, he didn't want to face it,
Yeah.
or he said he did, but he never did anything about it. Whereas I saw we had trauma coming up in our relationship playing out in different ways, but he was willing to fight it. And so a couple of those ways is, when you meet your aligned person, the beautiful thing is they're going to trigger probably all of the things that you need to work on in yourself. And so for Luca, I have so much love to give, and I have so much love for him, and he's the love of my life. And he grew up in an environment where he was taught that love was not safe,
Mm.
right? Because his dad left.
Mm.
His dad was a heroin addict and a criminal. His stepdad was abusive.
Mhm.
His mom was repressed. And
Mm.
so she did the best that she could with what she had.
Yeah.
His grandfather died, who is like his person, like love left him and love hurt him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we first got together, he would literally put his hand out, like my arm is straight, and he would put his hand out in front of me and go, like, you're loving me too much. Like, it's too much. Like, he would be like, I can't. Because
Mm.
I would just like a little kid, I just want to like love him and kiss him, right? Like, and he's like, don't do that. It's too much for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was hard for me because I was like, I just want to express my love to you.
Yeah.
And so he had to work through a lot of even like him coming to Canada and being around my family. We all have our own stuff, but I have a really beautiful family and really loving. And he was like, he didn't trust them. He was like, what's up with these people?
They're too loving and too kind.
They're too kind. He's like, they must want something from me. I was like, they don't, Luca. This is just how families work, And so there was so much triggering that came up with him, but I also saw that he wanted to work on it.
Yeah.
And for me, what Luca brought up in me is, again, he triggered my self-worth. He triggered my self-love. I questioned that I was beautiful enough, worthy enough, like hot enough, well-dressed enough to be with him. And because he had his like superficial facades, that he like had never dated anyone like me. Like he dated like the cool tattooed girl, like that fucking has like, I don't know, dreads and like, which is fine, like that's totally fine, don't get me wrong. I'm just not that person. Like I'm blue eye, blonde hair, like love sparkles, I'm like bright colors, like it's sunshine personified. Like I was like, he liked to date like the dark emo chick and I was not her, right? But he also had this sense of like, I really like, we have this really beautiful bond in our relationship, we get each other so deeply, and so we were triggering the fuck out of each other basically, right?
I just know you guys so well that I could just see this all like playing out. It's really
Yeah.
funny.
And but we also were willing to do the work, and like it probably took us 3 or 4 years to get to like, there was always so many moments of good, but there was a lot of moments of trigger, and there's so many things that came up between the two of us. But we constantly, what I am so proud of, and what both of us say, like we never went to couples therapy, we never did couples work, never did couples anything, we only did our own work. Because what a partner does is just amplify the shit in yourself. And so everything that was going on in each other, we go, how is this about me? Like what does this bring up in me? And I had this, I'll share this one story. I don't know if you share this, he shared this story, but we've talked about this before. There was this one situation, it was like the end of 2020, and we had been together maybe for like 2 years at that point. And when me and Luca got together, it wasn't a like, let's date. It was like, we are each other's person, right? Like we were building a life together. We were building a business together. We we're all in together. We traveled together. End of 2020, Luca comes to me and he says he's been talking to this other woman. And like, I'm gutted. And like, he's like, and not just like when I say talking to another woman, like, he wasn't like sexting her or anything, but he was just really interested in her and like was literally thinking about like going and visiting her and all of this. And I was kind of like, what the fuck is happening here? Like, we're all in, like, it's the middle of COVID, like I've introduced you to my family, like I was just like, what is happening? And in this was like the hardest thing that I've ever done. I could have gone into victim mode, right? I could have been like, woe is me. My partner is cheating on me. Not that he was, but like I could have gone into that. And what I did is I asked myself this really hard question. I heard my sister-in-law told me this. She went to an Eckhart Tolle and Oprah conference, and she heard Eckhart Tolle say this question, which is, how did I draw this into my life? And I asked myself this question, right? In all circumstances, you would admit, like anyone would be like, fuck you, bitch. You like, what are you doing to me? Like, how is this my fault? I didn't do anything, right? Like, I didn't actually do anything physically to bring this in. And, but I had to ask myself, how did I draw this into my life? And with hindsight of since this has happened, I realized that this period was a way for me to activate my own self-worth, because he was also playing out a pattern. His family line, we've realized this since, like nobody has ever not cheated or had a steady relationship. And it's the opposite in my family. My parents have been together for 52 years and we have our stuff. It's just, we're pretty good on the relationship front, right? And so he was also playing out this pattern. And we were at a point too where we were like, our relationship was really good. And we were like talking about getting engaged. And what was his PTSD, his upbringing? Like, it's not safe. It's not safe to be loved. It's not, because something's going to go wrong. Someone's going to pass away. Someone's going to hurt me. So I'm going to run to the next shiny object before I let this love in even more. And so I had this kind of inkling that that's what was happening, but he's also his own person.
Mm.
And especially with men, if we're talking about heterosexual relationships, too many women try and nag their partners
Yeah.
instead of like giving them the space for them to like realize their own shit and rise.
Mm.
Because like nobody wants to be nagged. You just go into a mother-son relationship, which is not empowering for them.
Mm.
And so I had to ask myself, how did I draw this into my life? And we were both working through it. And I was like, you got to go to a fucking retreat, like go work on yourself. And I'm going to work on myself. And I spent this time really like crying, feeling all of my feelings, processing everything. It was really challenging for me just because I was like, this person's the love of my life, this person. But I had to realize that whether Luca chose me, I say in quotation marks, or not, I am worthy. And I had to trust that no matter what he chose to do, this does not affect what I believe. Like I have to maintain this belief it's this or something better. And this is going to shake my belief that it's like my life with or without him is going to be beautiful. I want it to be with him, but I'm not going to beg him.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to fall on my knees and cry and tell him he has to be with me. I'm going to say I'm worthy of this standard. And I understand everyone makes mistakes, and you get to meet me up here. And if you're not going to meet me up here, you can go.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've done that consistently in our relationship, and he's done the same to me, and it's only made us better. He had this weekend where he went to this retreat, and it was basically like over the weekend he went and did iboga. So iboga is like a plant medicine, and it was really beautiful for what he needed in his life at that time. And basically he was going to come back and we we're going to decide if we're going to be together or not be together. And I went into that weekend again, the same thing with the Olympics. I was like, no matter what, I am worthy. Him choosing me doesn't make me worthy. Him loving me doesn't make me worthy. I'm worthy no matter what. If he wants to be with me, if he doesn't want to be with me, I want to be with him. I would love to. I feel like he's the love of my life and father of my children, but I will not beg him. And I know that I'm worthy no matter what. And I came to that conclusion, and he went through this journey, and he calls me like on Sunday when he was supposed to like talk to me 3 days later. And he just says, he's like, it was always you.
Yeah.
It's always you. And he said in his iboga journey, he's like, I just saw all of my patterns that I was playing out. I saw all of my ancestry that I was playing out, all of my trauma. And he's like, I don't want that. I actually want you. Yeah. And then like 3 months later, we got engaged. But the reason I tell that is like, we have been through the fucking trenches, and we've also like looked ourselves in the mirror. And I share that story because it was like, I think in anyone's perspective, it would have been totally fair for me to play the victim. And I chose not to, because we don't get to create our life by being a victim. We get to create our life by taking responsibility, even in the places where we feel like it's not our problem.
It's such a beautiful story. I don't know if you remember, but you rang me and you called me, and I had no idea what was going on. And you said something's going on with Luca, because I hadn't heard from him in a while, and I was starting to feel a little bit like, just because we chat on and off, I was a little bit worried about him. And then you rang me, and you know, in that moment, I've never felt so much anger at him in my life. But I also then, I don't know if you remember, but we had a conversation, and we both said, and I said to you that I just remember just saying to you as well that this is about you stepping into your power and your love and your light and who you are, and like your own. I just remember saying that to you, that like, and I'm like, just, it was amazing to see how strong you came out on the other side of things with both you guys. And it was more or less that I was shocked at the time, because you guys had been going through so much and been going so well, and you know, and it's such a powerful thing for both of you to constantly be doing the growth work with each other as well. And I feel like that is one of the most powerful things that we can do in relationships, is do that work. I've had that with my husband. We've had conversations, and we've had I'll be very honest about this. Reese, 6 months ago, I said, I think you should leave, because we got to a point, and I've never shared this with you or Luca, but it got to a point where I felt like I was doing more of the work and not getting met in a growth sense. And then I started to see in the last 6 months that the energy that we had been working with, and we'd gone off and done our own work in our own way, and I backed off completely because my role in it was that I was constantly being that mother role and being like, I'm really in this growth journey. It doesn't feel like you're in it with me. Even when he said to me, I'm in this for the long haul. I will grow with you. I want growth in this life with you. I want to grow and be your partner. It didn't feel that way to me because for a very long time in my life with my ex-partner, the same thing happened. It was very much like I put all this energy and effort in, and I was constantly making sure that we were good, and I was asking questions and doing the growth work and wanting to expand, and he didn't. He just didn't. And I've always been very cautious after that about who I let in my life. And even with my husband and myself, I've still been guarded on and off because I'm like, well, are you going to? Or I just had so much fear around that. So that's something I had to look at and go, you need to trust what he says. And the more that I've trusted, the more that we've blossomed, the more the energy's grown, the more he's grown, the more, so I wasn't smothering the energy or him. And I think that's something that women get caught up in or get taught from our mums and older lineages is bossing your husband around. It has to be this way or it won't work. And I think your relationship is a great example of, I really feel like it's a great example of you guys created your own rules in your relationship. You guys figured out what worked for you. You guys are constantly meeting each other and constantly pulling each other up. And I really didn't understand that until meeting my husband and also playing the role of the person who was constantly realizing that I might have to be the role of not playing the victim so that my husband could deal with some things. And then it's the opposite for me. He does the opposite for me. So it's constantly like you're constantly bringing each other to mirrors and mirroring each other constantly, which is a really beautiful experience in life. So
and I think with men too, like from my understanding, you, especially in partnership, if you nag them, they will just feel like they're little boys, but you have to give them space and believe in them, right? Like I think like there's two ways you can say something. It's like, you got to do this or else whatever. Or it's like, I like love you so much and I like, you are incredible. Like I just feel like we can be better. And I think men also really work well on challenge, right? Like if you think like the pursuit. So it's like I've said this to Luke a couple of times, like this is I'm willing to look at myself, but I need to meet you here, and if you're not here, I'm good. Like we're done. And I think that it's like I'm not going to tell you what to do because like that's your own thing. And I think sometimes like women try and coddle their partner too much, and it's like you need to give the man space to like feel like a fucking man that he is, and like rise, because I believe that men, are inherently good. We're just acting out our patterns, and no one feels good when they're coddled or smothered or nagged, but everyone wants to be believed there instead of like smothered there. And so like, I feel like that's like the way that we have relationship shit, but all shifts, but also like in that, if you're calling your partner to rise, you better be looking yourself in the fucking mirror, right? Because like it takes two to tango, and they'll call you out in your bullshit if you're not being authentic, right? And so the same thing happened like a year before we got married. There was just like things happening in our life, and Luca was like, he wasn't going to leave me or anything, but he was just like, he's a big dreamer, and he wanted to go down a different path. And I said to him, I was like, I need you to rise up. Like, I need you to, because, we know we want to have kids together. We know we want a family. Like, I need you to be up here. Like, I feel like if you do that path that you're wanting to do, that you're super excited about in this moment, that you've been excited about for 10 minutes, like that, like, it's not fitting our vision. So it's like, I need you to be up here, and I believe that you can, but I'm going to give you space to think about that. Like, both of us were really triggered, and he was super triggered for a few days, but it was actually like the best thing ever, because that activated a whole new level of manhood within him, which only makes him feel like a more powerful, wise, like leader of the family.
Oh yeah, 100%. I feel like you'd have to definitely take a look at yourself as a woman. I had to take a look at the fact that I was emasculating my husband, and it wasn't on purpose. It was old patterns. And as soon as I had read a couple of books and put together that I was actually doing this, I changed the way I got smarter about how I was speaking to him. I got smarter about how I was bringing things to him because before I realized that a lot of women talk, like you said before when you were talking to Luca, a lot of women talk to our partners like they're women, but they're totally different. Like how we converse with our girlfriends, men are not going to understand. So, for example, if you leave, you want them to take out the rubbish bin, right? For them, if they've come home from work and they are starving and that's all they're thinking about, because that's the capacity that they can hold, and you come at them and go, I need you to take the bin out now. And they're like, oh man, can I just eat something quickly? And then you're like, what? So you don't care? Or you don't care about like what I value? No, he doesn't. Because what he values is different to you in that moment. But if you ask him, hey, once you finish eating, do you mind at some point tonight taking the bin out? It brings value to me. It provides for me this, and this. Half the time men don't know what provides for us. And it's something I've learned along the way, and I've actually seen it work with my husband, and we talk about it now, that providing solution, like letting them provide for you, letting them stand for you and trusting that they will do it. And even if you're ready to nag them, go do something else so that they can, give them the opportunity to stand and be in their place. So yeah, thanks for answering that. One more quick question, and then I'll leave you to go and have your night. So what would be something that you would suggest? This is what I asked Luca as well. And what is the one thing that you could bring into the world that you would love everybody to have?
Oh my gosh. So many things. That's a hard question. Okay, I'm going to answer it. Actually, I was asked a similar question this weekend. I'm going to go down the same route. So I used to teach little kids how to swim years ago. And my favorite age was not the babies, because baby swimming classes are so fucking boring because you just sing songs and like the parents are looking at you like you're stupid. But my favorite age was 4-year-olds. So like around 3, like 4 or 5, like they're out of toddler years. They like, they understand what's going on. They talk, but they have the innocence. They would look at me like I was fucking Taylor Swift. Like they thought that I was the bee's knees. They thought I was so cool and so amazing. And if I would sing a song, because you do a lot of songs when you're some teacher to little kids, they would just like, I remember seeing their eyes like wide, like I was Mickey Mouse, Taylor Swift, like the coolest person in the world. The reason that I say this is we grow up and we kind of lose that sense of seeing other people like that. If I wish that more people could see themselves in the eyes of their 4-year-old self, because I bet your 4-year-old self would be like, oh my gosh, she is so amazing. Like, remember when you were little and there was somebody you looked up to and they were just like, there was nothing wrong because you don't have all those intrusive thoughts yet. You don't have that capacity for thinking. You just are so in awe and you love being around those people. Like if we saw ourselves more like that little version of us, our 4-year-old was looking at us, if we were looking at ourselves through our own eyes, I think there would be so much healing because there wouldn't be that. Little kids they don't care if you're brown, pink, purple, or big, tall, whatever. They're just like, you're a human. They don't think like that yet, right? They just like, they feed off of the energy that you are and the energy that you give them.
Yeah.
And I bet we would be a million times less critical of ourselves. Like, like you can do what was it? Like stupid magic tricks and stuff that's not even impressive. And they think that it's so cool, right? Like, I think that we need that self-compassion more from our 4-year-old self.
Yeah. I was going to say compassion is what I felt like is like a massive one. And it's something that a lot of people, including myself, have had to relearn, is just like that self-compassion for yourself. You're learning, you're growing, you're still evolving. That's really beautiful. That's fun too. That's really fun. Everyone just looks at themselves like they're 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for giving us your time today, Danielle. So we went a little bit over.
That's okay. It's so fun. Such a good chat.
I haven't really had time limits on my bodies. Maybe I should start.
Oh, it's okay. Luca's making dinner, so it's all good.
That's nice. That's delicious. Sounds good. Can I have some? Um, so thank you very much for giving us your time and being here today. And if anyone wants to look you up on Instagram, I will put your Instagram handle on in the show notes, as well as Danielle's book that you can get from Amazon. I highly recommend getting it. It's absolutely incredible. I have mine sitting next to me. Um, so is there anything else you would like to say before leaving? Or
Yeah, I just like remember how amazing you are and just be aware of what's taking up like the majority. If you would give yourself an audit of what you're thinking about most of the day, me 10 years ago, what I was thinking about most of the day was what I looked like, what my clothes felt like, if I had eaten too much, if I was too fat or too thin or whatever. It was so self-obsessed in a negative way. And it is so powerful to be 31, almost 32, like in a way where like I realized that, yeah, I still have some negative self-talk, but maybe it's like 5% of the day. And most of my thinking is actually about my dreams, my goals, how I want to help, how I want to impact, how I want to love on other people. And that's a sign of the healing work that I've done and the growth work that I've done. And I want take a mental note of how much you're thinking about those negative things, because it's going to show you the work that you need to do. Also know that everyone's going to have a negative thought here and there. Like that's absolutely normal, but I don't want it to be taking up, especially women's majority of their thinking. Because if you're thinking about how much you hate yourself or what you're not doing enough of, or if you're too fat or thin or whatever, you're actually not spending time thinking about what you can do in this world and who you can love and the gifts that you have come here to serve. So like, please work with Danielle, do the work, show up, heal that shit, because it is like the world needs you. The world needs you in your light and not in your smallness. And the only way that we do that is by showing up for ourselves, doing the work and changing those patterns. And it's absolutely possible.
Thanks for saying that, babe. That's really beautiful. And thank you for being here today. You're absolutely incredible and I absolutely adore you.
Anytime. I love a chat.
Yeah.